you everyone for joining. Keep letting folks in and get started shortly. Appreciate logging in early. I know we were testing our own Zooms too. Thank you everyone for coming in. We'll keep letting folks in. Get started in a minute. All right, as everyone keeps going in, we'll get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon to discuss decoding nutrition labels, portion mastery, and produce preservation. My name is Corinne Kleinschmidt, and I am the Vice President of Community Impact for the American Heart Association based out of Phoenix. Understanding nutrition labels, mastering portion sizes, and effectively preserving produce are crucial skills for achieving nutrition security, especially in rural communities. Limited access to diverse and nutritious food in these areas can lead to health disparities. To tackle these challenges, the American Heart Association and Banner University Family Plans, a prominent healthcare provider in Arizona, have joined forces to address nutrition security in rural communities. Through our collaborative initiatives, today we aim to educate residents on how to read and understand nutrition labels, which is essential for making informed food choices. We focus on portion mastery to help individuals maintain balanced diets and avoid overeating. And we promote produce preservation techniques to extend the shelf life of fresh foods to ensure that residents can save money and enjoy nutritious foods longer. By equipping our Arizona communities with these vital skills, the AHA and Banner Health Plans aspire to empower individuals to overcome nutritional barriers, fostering healthier lifestyles and contributing to the overall improvement of public health in these regions and across Arizona. It's now my pleasure to introduce our sponsor and moderator for today's discussion, Heidi Eccleston, Senior Director of Program Development for Banner Health Plans. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you, Corinne. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our discussion on decoding nutrition labels, portion mastery, and produce preservation in collaboration with the American Heart Association. Banner Health Plans in Arizona knows the critical importance of addressing nutrition security for our community's well-being. Recognizing the direct impact of nutrition on overall health, we are committed to implementing targeted strategies to enhance access to nutritious food options. By prioritizing education on decoding nutrition labels, mastering portion sizes, and preserving produce, we aim to equip our community with the knowledge and skills needed to make healthier food choices and extend the life of their fresh foods. By focusing on these key areas, we not only contribute to the immediate health of our members, but also invest in long-term preventative health care, reducing the burden on our healthcare system. Through proactive measures and community engagement, we strive to make a lasting impact on the health and vitality of Arizona, aligning with our mission to provide comprehensive, accessible, and quality healthcare services. As we begin, please note that we are recording this session and we will have time at the end of the program for questions. So please hold on to them until our last speaker has finished or enter them into the chat as we go to be addressed at the end. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker from FoodSmart, Teresa Mutafis. Teresa is a registered dietitian and international board-certified lactation consultant with over 13 years of experience working with patients from 0 to 90 years old. She specializes in maternity and postpartum nutrition, goal setting and accountability, and intuitive eating. She enjoys being a cheerleader for her patients as it's important to meet someone where they are at and give them the tools to succeed in their goals.
Thank you so much, everyone. I am super excited to be here with you all today. I love teaching about nutrition and I love going through all the things. I have 3 kids of my own, and I don't have dogs barking in the background, but I have a fat, lazy cat over in the other room because he's really hot. It's pretty hot here in Massachusetts where I am. So we can move on to the next slide and get going. So we want to unlock the nutrition code today because nutrition leads to longevity, heart health, reduced risk of disease, and vitality. But I want to know, though, because everyone has their own personal idea of what good nutrition means to them. So what does good nutrition mean to you? And I want you all to pop that in the chat. Let me know what it means to you. Natural food options, feeling good. Okay. Anyone else? Don't be shy, everyone. Good eating habits, ingredients is found in nature, no chemicals. Being fueled, yes, having energy. Things I don't typically like. Oh no. Eating plenty of fruits and veggies, best food choices, avoiding processed foods, feeling good, fresh foods. Nutrient dense foods, I like that. Veggies and fruits, foods that sustain your body, fruits and veggies. Making sure we get all our vitamins and minerals, clean eating, healthy eating. Food for sustenance, proper portions, fresh and natural, knowing what is in your food and where it comes from. Yeah. Trying different foods. I love this. What a nice variety of answers. Good gut food. Okay, that's an interesting focus too. Look at all these different answers. And it's interesting because I think sometimes nutrition gets put forward. Someone said balanced diet, grown from a farm that are not genetically modified. So I can see where a lot of people's brains are at today. We do have different focuses, and it's interesting being in the nutrition field for as long as I have. Really, you see these things ebb and flow. And at the end of the day, though, it ends up coming down to fruits and veggies, making sure we're eating good stuff, not too much of the super processed stuff, trying to eat locally and all the things. But today we're going to really hone in on the basics and get to the kind of the heart of the matter, no pun intended, and talk about the how much and the whys. And maybe another time we can all chat together about the processed versus non-processed and all that. But we got to learn the basics first. First up is nutrition labels and portions. I'm going to try to make this as not dry as possible. But why do we even talk about portions? Well, obviously to know how much we're eating, right? And why is that important? Because we want to kind of see, and I don't like to necessarily say that, oh, you can only eat this amount of food or you have to eat this amount. It's a good gauge. Sometimes I have people measure their portions just to understand where they're at, because our guesstimations are not always correct. And I'm going to have a little quiz for you all, pop quiz for you all. I don't want you to view portions as a restriction. That if it says, okay, this recipe involves 1 cup of rice and 3 ounces of chicken, that you are restricted to that amount or have to eat that amount. It's really more about understanding where you're at. It is about data gathering. And what I like to tell people is start with a typical portion on your plate. Start with, what does 3 ounces of chicken look like? What does half a cup of Cheerios look like? What is it really a tablespoon of butter look like? And like I said, I'm going to give you guys a pop quiz. Is there any way to spotlight me so I can be up instead of the slides? Okay. All right. So pop quiz. I want you to put in the chat. Here are my hands. I think I have normal sized hands. What's the portion size of Cheerios here? It goes down. Oops, you can't see. Under there. How much is this? Any guesses? 1 cup, 3/4 cup, half cup, 1 cup, 3/4 cup. Okay. All right. It should all fit in the palm of your hand. 3 ounces, 1 cup. This is a half a cup of Cheerios. So actually some of you overestimated, which I find very interesting that we had some overestimations there. Now it could be the size of the bowl too. If this was in a large bowl, and I wonder if I have something to put this in. Let me put it, I have a larger bowl here. Let me toss it in there and we'll see. Doesn't look like quite as much, does it? So looks can be a little bit deceiving. Now, this is sun butter because I didn't want to, my kids are going crazy with the peanut butter. This is sun butter. What do you think the portion size is here? 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, quarter cup, 2 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons. You guys are good. Yes, this is 2 tablespoons. Nice work. Fair amount, right? But then, okay, what size is the slice of bread you're spreading it on, right? What's that going to look like? And then finally, I have one more for you. I have a nice bowl of leafy greens here. What's the portion size of this? 1 cup, 1 cup, 2 cups, 2 cups, 1 cup, 1.5 cup. 1 cup, 4 ounces, 2 cups. This is actually 2 cups. Leafy greens are very fluffy, and actually a portion size for them is 2 cups. Nice work, everyone. Okay, so I just thought that'd be a fun little game to play where it can spotlight the slides again. Okay, beautiful. So I don't want this to be dry, but when you're using portion sizes to help you determine, okay, how much am I eating? What is my baseline at? Measuring is obviously going to be more accurate than estimating or anything like that, but it is very, very time consuming. Again, it's helpful as a touch base. Typically, again, not unless it's recommended or you really, really love numbers. I don't want you to necessarily just sit there and measure everything and weigh everything. It takes the enjoyment out of eating. You want to enjoy what you're eating, and that is a really big take home. You want to taste the flavors and get this wonderful, enjoyable experience out of it. If we're sitting there and measuring, I've had most patients tell me, it kind of takes away the fun, right? So what are we looking at for a typical serving size? Well, the 2 cups of leafy greens that I showed, okay? That is 1 serving of veggies. That doesn't mean you only have 1 serving. You can have a nice big salad if you'd like. Ideally, we're getting 2.5 or more per day. And this is where serving sizes can come in, or portion sizes can come in handy, because it's like, okay, 2.5 or more servings. This is 1 serving. So a big salad probably will meet your recommended amount of veggies per day. And that's at least. I'd love to see people get more. A cup of raw cut veggies, so you think your carrots and things like that, or a cup of no sodium added veggie juice. Fruits, we want at least 2 servings per day. A medium fruit is the size of a baseball. So like a small plum, a small apple, something pretty compact. A cup of fruit or berries, a cup of juice, although that's not the ideal because we're not missing out on the fiber, or a half a cup of dried fruit because all the moisture has come out. So you just have these little dried pieces of fruit, and a half a cup of that does meet your portion size for fruit. So you want to think about this. Okay, what am I eating for lunch? What am I eating for breakfast? Where's my snack? Am I getting in at least 4.5? I would love to see you get more, 5 servings or more of fruits and veggies per day. That's where the good nutrition is, as a lot of you stated. Next slide, please. Now, grains, I know they get a really bad rap, right? No one wants to have the carbs. No one wants to have the grains. Grains have a lot of great nutrients. Whole grains are our good friends, right? We want the whole wheat or the brown rice or the quinoa or the farro or any of those other ancient grains, right? 6 per day is a reasonable amount to get the amount of fiber and some of the B vitamins and other things. Oh, a serving of grain is 1 slice of bread. Guess what? That means like a hamburger roll is typically 2 servings of your grains. A small tortilla, like a corn tortilla or something like that. A cup of cereal, a flaky cereal. Okay, so a little bit more of the Cheerios here. Michelle's very thought about this. Everyone has their own plan. That's what meeting with a dietitian, not to toot my horn or my colleagues' horns, but we help you kind of navigate that. I don't want anyone to feel like they're deprived when they're working with me. A half a cup of cooked rice or pasta is 1 serving, or 3 cups of popcorn, because again, fluffy air. You get recommended roughly 6 per day. Okay. Dairy right now is recommended at 3 per day. Most people don't get this amount. The reason they recommend so much dairy is for the calcium and the vitamin D and some of our B vitamins and things like that in there. There are other ways to get these nutrients, because I know 3 servings of dairy is a lot. 3 cups of milk, most people aren't getting that much and don't want to get that much, lactose intolerance, the whole thing. An ounce of cheese, though, everyone loves cheese, or a lot of people love cheese. Just to illustrate what a ounce of cheese is, it's about the size of a string cheese stick. Okay. That is 1 ounce of cheese. So it's a tiny amount, but I don't know, 3 of those a day, you could probably do. And again, half a cup of rice. We're not limiting you to a half a cup of rice. It is simply, that's what a portion size is when you're kind of looking at your entire day. Like, how much am I putting on my plate? You don't have to have a half a cup. It is just for data gathering. So don't get nervous. And someone asked about alternatives for lactose intolerance. We'll definitely bring that up in the Q&A. Now, protein. Protein is important for bone structure, or for muscle function and structure. It's important for our cells. It is wonderful for satiety, or feeling satisfied or full. Protein can actually dampen down some of those hunger hormones too. Now, people love protein nowadays, and they like to go way overboard. Protein is not magical. You're not going to eat a 50% protein diet and all of a sudden lose all the weight in the world and all of that. It can only be used as much as your body can use it. And your body takes extra calories, because protein is a calorie, and stores it as fat. It's just that protein has a lot of uses. We do want to aim for plant-based, so our beans and nuts and things like that. Those are optimal sources of protein, but meat is fine too. 1 ounce of meat which is about the size of about the size of your finger, is 1 ounce of meat. 3 ounces of meat is about the size of the palm of your hand, or a deck of cards. We want to try to get in 5 ounces a week of nuts or seeds. Okay. A few servings of fish per week, especially fatty fish like salmon, and then beans, lentils, tofu, peanut butter, all of that all counts as your protein. Eggs are excellent sources of protein as well. So we have lots of choices there. Most people get enough protein, I've found, especially if they're focused on it. But again, it's not magical. And I do find that a lot of women I've been working with are not getting enough protein, which is interesting. Again, a dietitian can help you determine what is your kind of exact protein needs. Then we do want to get some fats in. Liquid fats are always a better choice because they are not unsaturated. We don't have enough time to go into all the fats, but if it's a liquid at room temperature, it's good stuff to use. Obviously, are things like olive oil, avocado oil, are even healthier choices, but some of them also have high or low smoke points. So olive oil burns off really easily when you're trying to cook. So that's why it's nice to have different oils that you use. Solid fats, things like the fat you find marbled inside of meat, or in 80% ground beef and things like that. That's the stuff that's not as good for our hearts. Okay. We want to aim for 3 tablespoons of healthy fats per day. We probably get more than that, but fat is really good for our bodies. It's wonderful for our cells, our skin, our hair, our nails. We just want to choose the good stuff. So maybe fried fish, not so much. Baked salmon, bit of a better choice. All right, next slide, please. Now, portion size is great. We kind of reviewed those just to kind of get a sense, but it is a pain in the butt to do, like I mentioned before. So we got the plate method to help you out. You probably have seen this in many, many different formats, okay? But this is a great way to kind of limit portions or not limit portions, but kind of keep the proportions on your plate in a healthy size. Again, if you really are feeling your rice that day and you make a quarter of your plate rice and you're like, you know what, I just want some more rice, great, go get it if you're still hungry. But this is a way to make sure you're getting in all those veggies, half a plate veggies, getting in your protein, a quarter plate protein, and getting in your whole grains and your starches and things like that. If you opt out of the starches and grains for a meal, that's okay too. But I at least want to see the proteins and the veggies in there for sure. All right, next slide, please. And that brings us to the nutrition label. I've had all the patients I've worked with over the years, very different kind of knowledge or expertise on how to use this label. You know, this label is meant for the public to see, right? And meant for us to use it for data. Most people don't quite understand what they are looking at. The percentages don't make sense. And it's like, what do I do with the grams and all that? So hopefully I'll give you a quick rundown today. This handout is actually an American Heart Association handout. There are lots of great resources for the food label online. The big thing I want you to look at, and if you have a food label near you, go grab it. Let's go through it together, okay? But the first thing you want to look at on a food label is up here at the top. Oh, I don't have a pointer. Never mind. I'll show you. I forgot I wasn't controlling the slide. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's pointing it out. So is this information on top underneath nutrition facts? It tells you how many servings per container and what a serving size is. All right. All that means is there's just a way for you to gauge how much is in the package, or if I eat the whole package, how much is in there. It's really important. So say you want to grab a bottle of soda. You're like, I just feel like a Coke today or something like that. You grab one of those 20-ounce bottles and you're like, oh my gosh, look, it only has this amount of sugar. I'm good. What you didn't read is that there was actually 2 servings in that container, meaning you had to double all the numbers below it. And that's where you need some of your math skills. So wherever it says serving size or servings per container, and you eat more than 1 serving, you need to do some math on these other numbers if you want to see what you're getting. Okay, so serving size, always the first thing to look at. On this little package of crackers I have here, 55 crackers are 1 serving. On the label on our screen, what does that say? I'm having a hard time. 2/3 cup is 1 serving, okay? Then we have calories next. Calories are energy. And I know it's like, oh, you eat too many calories, you gain weight, this, that, and the other. In the most basic sense, if you eat more calories than you need, then technically, yes, you are storing it away, meaning you're gaining weight. So if you're counting calories, obviously this calories number is important. I don't encourage calorie counting too often. There's too many nuances there. And it's not always the best choice for everyone to just sit there and count calories. And it can create a lot of interesting obsessions and restrictions. But calories are there. We know how much energy is in our food. Next line is total fat. You don't need to worry so much about that. What I want you to look at are those numbers next to trans fat and saturated fat down underneath total fat. And if you want to highlight those with your mouse, thank you. Saturated fat, we want to limit to about 20% or less of our fat intake for the day. That's a lot of math for you to do. Just a little bit of saturated fat is fine. Just keep it on the lower side. It's going to be obvious what's higher in saturated fat. Butter is basically a block of saturated fat. Fried foods, fried chips, things like that, those are all going to be higher in saturated fat. Trans fat is actually not allowed to be put in foods, but some companies have found loopholes. It'll say 0 grams trans fat, but that that means it can have half a gram or less per serving of the food. So if you eat more than one serving, you might be getting some trans fat. It's super unhealthy. It really has been shown to be a big risk factor for heart disease. Again, it's in our food supply to a way lesser extent than it used to be, but it's worth looking at it. If you want to look at the ingredients panel on your foods, which isn't on the flyer there, but it's usually somewhere near the nutrition facts, you can look for the word hydrogenated oil, and that'll tell you that there is a trans fat in there, even though they're being sneaky in saying that it's 0 grams, okay? Then the next number I really want you to look at is sodium. Sodium is going to be higher on processed packaged food than it is like if you picked up a bag of apples that happened to have a nutrition facts, or like a thing of applesauce or a thing of yogurt. Okay, the more processed and packaged it is, the more likely there's a lot of sodium, which is not great for our blood pressure. Okay, we typically want to stick to, it depends on what resource you look at. For people with blood pressure issues or heart conditions, it can be as low as 1,200 milligrams per day or less. Other people have a little more flexibility, but again, it's very obvious where the somewhat problematic foods, where those are, right? They're going to be higher in sodium and all of that. Then the last thing I want you to look at, I want you to skip over the carbohydrates. Fiber is good. The more fiber, dietary fiber, the better. We want at least 28 grams per day or more of dietary fiber. It helps kind of keep us regular, and it actually really helps with high cholesterol and helps us feel full. Then you have total sugars, which could include naturally occurring sugars like, you know, the sugar in blueberries or the sugar naturally present in milk. And then added sugars is below that. Added sugars we want to keep as low as possible because it's exactly what it is. They added sugar to this to make it sweet. Those are the types of things that are not great for diabetes, heart health, and everything, and just healthy eating in general. We want to keep our added sugars on a pretty minimal level. Again, we don't need to avoid them entirely. There's going to be days where you're going to go out and have that birthday cake, or you want an ice cream cone with your kids. That's fine. It's just looking at what your day-to-day overall patterns are and not getting lost in the weeds. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we're actually shifting gears. So we did a little bit of nutrition, but now we're going to do a little bit of food safety, because this is another important piece of the nutrition puzzle. Food safety is no joke. My husband is very lax with food safety, and I can't tell you how many times he's had some tummy troubles, we'll put it that way. Foodborne illness can just simply cause upset stomach, diarrhea. It can go progress to vomiting. It can include parasites, and sometimes it can affect other body systems as well. When it's severe enough, it can progress to dehydration, severe illness, hospitalization, and even death. All right. And if we go to the next slide, we can see millions and millions people get sick from food poisoning every year. Over 100,000 are hospitalized, and there are actually 3,000 deaths from foodborne illness per year in the United States. It's especially worse, as you can imagine, for those with chronic illnesses or anyone with a compromised immune system. Pregnant women, for example, need to be careful with listeria. So lunch meat typically is out of the question for pregnant women unless they are microwaving it and all of that. So there are some pretty bad bugs out there. We'll put it that way. Next slide, please. All right, so I want you to put in the chat box, what is the single most important thing you can do to keep your food safe? Wash hands. proper cleanings, storing at proper temp, proper storage, correct temperature, so a lot of temperature and storage. Yeah. Washing your veggies and fruits, cleaning and storing, temp. Okay. Guess what? Only one of you got it right. Now, all of you are right. These are all good things. But Ariel got it right. It is washing your hands. And then those of you who said surfaces, definitely cleaning and washing everything down. That is the biggest thing you can do. And when we have issues with foodborne illnesses like food recalls, you know, the big thing with romaine a couple years ago, all the romaine lettuce was recalled. It had whatever bacteria, I forget which one it was, E. coli, I think. It's because of facility cleaning. It's because of improper handling and things like that. Okay, it can be as simple as that. Keeping things clean. The picture gave it away. I know. I figured you grabbed it from the picture. So you still get your bonus points. Okay, so we can move on. Next slide. So prep and storage really quickly, because I know we got some interesting food preservation stuff that I'd love to listen in on. We always want to keep poultry and meat in the way back of our fridge. Okay, that's where it's coldest, and those are the ones that have the higher propensity to start growing harmful bacteria. When you're shopping, I know it's like you went shopping, it's like the last thing you want to do is unpack everything. At least refrigerate and freeze the things that need to be put away. At least do that, especially in the hot weather. Always wash your hands and your surfaces. Wash all your produce unless it says pre-washed. Do not wash it again if it says pre-washed. That can actually start to introduce bacteria back in, which I know sounds super counterintuitive. I know it's been certain geographical areas or certain cultures, certain families will rinse chicken. Do not rinse chicken. You are essentially spreading the potential germs all over the place by doing that. You do not need to rinse your chicken. A big thing you can do is separate cutting boards. So you have typically a plastic cutting board, because woods are harder to wash and disinfect. A plastic cutting board for your meat and a separate for raw meat and a separate one for your fruits and veggies and things like that. And then you could have a separate one for cooked meat as well, but at least at a minimum, raw meat and your other stuff. You do want to keep that separate. Check your fridge temp, 40 degrees or less. All right. That is the number for stopping or inhibiting bacterial growth. There still will be, as anyone who's opened up a container and seen mold, it's not going to stop growth of microorganisms, mold, bacteria, and the like, but it will slow it down. Freezer even more so, but that needs to be set at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or less. So please check those. That can be a big, big thing. And then we always keep raw and cooked foods separate. That's another big thing. Okay, you can move on. And then a lot of you mentioned temperatures, and that is also good. You can get like some magnets that you can stick up on your fridge with the different temperatures. Usually like local health boards and stuff like that will have those sorts of things as freebies at fairs and whatever. But we want our raw beef, pork, lamb, veal, chops, roasts to be cooked to 145 degrees. That's with the thermometer stuck into the thickest part and left there for a few seconds. Then the meat continues to cook when you take it off of the heat source. So we're actually going to allow the meat to rest for at least 3 minutes before we carve and eat it. And then the numbers are higher for ground meat and poultry, 160 for ground meat, any type of ground meat, and 165 for, things like chicken breasts or turkey legs and things like that. All right. And then we can move on. And then food storage for safety, which will nicely segue us in to our next panelist. But any food that's been out for more than 2 hours, so we're thinking barbecues, cookouts, outdoor parties, we want a maximum of 2 hours before we toss that food. I know it's awful, unless you're keeping it on ice and protected from like the beating sun, okay? Leftovers should always be eaten within 3 to 4 days. And this website, Eat or Toss, is fantastic. You can put in any food or things. I saw someone asked about casseroles and pasta. Eat or Toss is going to have all of that information for you. It is a fantastic website for checking on that. So I know this was a quick overview of all of these different topics. I hope it was helpful, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some more questions in the Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa, for that informative presentation. I now welcome our next speaker, Wheezy Bryson. Wheezy is the culinary manager at the Sahuarita Food Bank and Community Resource Center. She has a degree in culinary arts and business and has been working as a chef for a majority of her career. Wheezy's passion is food and feeding people, which has led her to working and volunteering at nonprofits for the past 3 years. She believes that everyone deserves a good meal.
Hi, I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about some food preservation. So first of all is selecting good produce. And this is when you should probably choose local produce. And I know it's not an option for everybody. It's financially or accessibility wise, it's not always the right option for everybody. But when you can, choosing local produce is the best option. Shopping at local farmers markets, growing your own produce. Here in Arizona, we do have a very long growing season, and learning the ins and outs of the growing season here in Arizona is very beneficial. We could grow year round if you know how to do it, which I do not, but we do have some experts on our staff who do. And freezing fresh produce is a great way, super easy way to preserve your produce. Another thing is picking your own produce. I know Instacart and those kind of shopping platforms have, it's very easy to use. You pick your produce, you pick your groceries online, and somebody else shops for you. But from experience, I can tell you that the Instacart shoppers, no shade, but they're not spending 5 minutes at the strawberries picking the best container of strawberries for you. So when you can, pick your own produce is the best option. You can go to the next slide. And then once you get your groceries home, the place to store the produce and anything really is in the pantry. There are certain things that will go in the pantry in a cool, dark place, and we'll talk about those in later slides. There are some things that will be stored loose on the countertop to avoid heat and moisture and sunlight, but some things can be stored on the countertop and in the refrigerator. Most produce does better in plastic bags or mesh bags with holes in them, or in a crisper drawer. And next slide. We're going to skip this video, but we will send it to you with all of the other information. Okay, now to produce preservation. We'd already talked about keeping your refrigerator at 40 degrees and below, and that is crucial to keeping your produce at its peak ripeness. Always refrigerate cut and peeled produce. Once you cut into any produce, it becomes what we call in the food industry a TCS food, or a food that needs time and temperature control for safety. So as soon as you cut into that produce, it's going to go bad quicker. So you need to put it in the refrigerator. And then storing fruits and vegetables separately, we will apples, bananas, broccoli, cauliflower, cucumbers, onions, pears, tomatoes, and watermelon. Store those away from other produce because they let off a gas called ethylene, which ripens produce quicker. So if they're touching or close together, it will lead to rotting of your produce quicker. We could go to the next slide. Question: how do you store your tomatoes? Put it in the chat box. Yeah, in the fridge, countertop, frozen, counter, fridge, counter, 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 then fridge, fridge, counter, fridge, counter, fridge. So I'm seeing half and half, counter, fridge. So tomatoes should actually be stored on a countertop. They should be stored at room temperature. The refrigerator does most of the time it halts ripening for your fruits and vegetables, but for certain fruits and vegetables, it actually increases their chance of rotting quicker. Tomatoes is one of those things. Bananas is another. If you put them in the fridge, they'll turn brown really quick. So you should store your tomatoes and bananas on the counter. Apples should be stored. Apples are one of the ones that produce a lot of the ethylene gas, and they should be stored away from other produce. And they can be stored on the counter or in the fridge, or both on the counter and then in the fridge. Avocados, you should ripen them on your counter and then store them in the fridge to halt that ripening. Avocados are one of those things where it's like they have, seems like sometimes a 10-minute window when they're good. So as soon as they get to that point, put them in the fridge. Once they're cut, they oxidize very quickly, so they'll turn brown if they touch the air. So a way to store your avocados once they're cut, you could put them in a mason jar of water and put that whole jar in the fridge and they won't turn brown. And they'll stay like that for a couple of days. Bananas, keep them out of the refrigerator and on the countertop and away from other fruits and vegetables, because they will let off that gas that will make other produce go bad quicker. Berries should be stored in the refrigerator, but do not wash them until you're ready to eat. They are so fragile that they will disintegrate very quickly. So keep them dry in the fridge. Cherries and grapes also in the fridge, unwashed in their original containers if you can. And next slide. Citrus fruit, you could store them in a crisper drawer in the refrigerator in a mesh bag, and that will help them stay fresher longer. Melons should be stored loose in the refrigerator even before they're cut. A lot of people keep them on the counter, but they will stay better in the refrigerator. Watermelons are one of those ethylene producing vegetable fruits, so keep those away from other fruits and vegetables in the fridge. And then stone fruit like nectarines, peaches, plums, you could keep them in a paper bag until they're ripened, and then put them in the refrigerator once they're ripe or almost ripe. And if you wanted to speed up the process of ripening, if you have some stone fruit that you want to eat quicker than a few days, you could put one of those ethylene producing fruits in the bag with the stone fruit, like a banana or an apple, and it will help speed up that ripening process so you could eat them quicker if that's your goal. Tomatoes should be stored at room temperature. The refrigerator does make them rot quicker. And then keep them away from the sun and heat, but store them at room temperature. Go to the next slide. And here's just a guide, a spreadsheet of all of the fruits and vegetables that we've talked about, where to store them, how long they keep, and how long they keep frozen. And this will be included in your slide that you get in your email. Go to the next one. Here's a tricky one. How do you store your cucumbers? Fridge. I actually store mine in the fridge too. Fridge, counter, and fridge, counter, room temp, fridge. Cucumbers, okay. Fridge after cutting. Yep, absolutely fridge after cutting. This says that they could be stored at room temperature. And a lot of times I like to think about when I get home from the grocery store, where did I find that in the grocery store? Where did I find that item? Was it refrigerated when I picked it up from the grocery store? And if so, I try to keep it in that same area in my house. So cucumbers can be found in either, sometimes they're refrigerated in the store and sometimes they're not. So just keeping that in mind when you bring your produce home will help you remember where to keep things at home. Broccoli and cauliflower are best to keep separate in the refrigerator drawers away from other produce. And this is because of that ethylene gas and because they could get a little stinky and could transfer, that smell could transfer to your fruits, which strawberry flavored broccoli does not sound super tasty to me. Celery should be stored in the refrigerator. If you wanted to put it in a container of water, that will help keep it crisp longer. Corn should be stored in their husks in the refrigerator. And then cucumbers can be stored at room temperature or in the refrigerator. and then absolutely after they're cut in the refrigerator, definitely. Eggplant should be stored at room temperature, but can be kept in the refrigerator for 1 to 3 days if they're used very soon after they're taken out of the refrigerator. And then green beans store in the refrigerator. Next slide. Leafy vegetables like greens, lettuce, chard, they should all be stored in the refrigerator. The onion plant family, they should, like garlic and onions, they should be stored in a cool, dry place. So in a pantry, in the back of your pantry, in a basket is a great place for potatoes, onions, and other root vegetables in their full form. Mushrooms should be kept in your refrigerator, but don't wash them before you put them in the refrigerator. Wash them as you need them because they will get very slimy. And then when you do use the mushrooms, just wiping them off with a damp towel to get that dirt off is a better option than rinsing them underwater. Peppers can be stored at room temperature or in the refrigerator. And then root vegetables, some of them, like carrots, should be stored, and beets and radishes should be stored in the refrigerator. But potatoes, like we mentioned before, sweet potatoes, winter squashes, butternut squash can be stored in the pantry, kind of near your onions, if you have room over there. And then here's another guide for all of these things we talked about, and it'll be available in your email. And okay, some creative ways to use produce instead of tossing it. What do you got for me? Salad, stock, composting, broth, stir fry, salad, plant food, like composting, soup, juice, soup, bananas, frozen bananas for banana bread, feeding the chickens, composting. Amazing ideas. Those are all great options. I like to keep a bag in my freezer. Smoothies, great. I keep a bag in my freezer, a Ziploc bag that I throw all my scraps into. So things that are on the edge of rotting that I don't have time to make a salad or a soup for, I have a bag in my freezer, and all my onion ends, carrot peelings go into that bag. And then once a month, I make a veggie stock or a chicken stock. If I have rotisserie chicken carcasses left over, I'll just throw all of that stuff into one big pot and boil it and make a delicious stock. But these are all great ideas. Okay, ideas to best utilize produce. Making a soup, that was mentioned a lot. You can make a really easy soup with store-bought chicken broth, or bone broth has a little more protein, a little more nutrients to it, and just adding those vegetables in. Canned fruit with low to no sugar yogurt or cottage cheese is a great way to use up any leftover fruit or canned fruit. For breakfast, you could top your whole grain cereal with some canned fruit. Adding frozen vegetables to a pasta dish for extra texture and flavor. But as was mentioned prior, for food safety, make sure if you're using frozen vegetables, look at the package. And if it says to cook it to 165 degrees, please do that, because a lot of times these frozen vegetables do need to be cooked all the way through. If you just add them at the very end and don't really cook them, it could make you sick. Adding pureed fruits and vegetables into sauces, smoothies, and soups for a boost in flavor and nutrients is also a great idea. I know here there are sometimes we can't, the produce comes in so bad that we have to put it in buckets and send it to the farm. And we have some pig farmers who come pick it up and feed their pigs with it. So there's always options instead of putting our produce in a landfill for utilizing it, either for ourselves or for a farmer. And then how can we eat healthier? Read your food labels, learn what it means. And I learned a lot today about reading food labels. Enjoy frozen and canned produce. Canning sounds like it's a daunting process. There's a lot that goes into it, but there's lots of YouTube videos and lots of things online to learn how to do that. Look for that heart check mark on your boxes to see if they're heart healthy. Make smart choices when ordering out. One of my best tips for ordering out and eating out is looking at the menu ahead of time and making a choice ahead of time. once I get to a restaurant, I get so flustered. I just end up ordering whatever I see first. And if you have that in mind when you go to the restaurant, it makes it a lot easier to make a choice that will make you feel good. Cooking more meals at home, having some recipes in your back pocket that you can make really quickly with items that you have on hand is crucial for helping you stay on track with your meal planning and not ordering out. I know when I get home and I'm tired, if I don't have one of these meals that I have in my back pocket, for me it's breakfast burritos. Just a little tip. Then we're gonna order out. It's just we're gonna get pizza, and it's always not always the best option. Make a few simple swaps. Swap out some maybe a higher sugar, higher salt, higher fat items with something a little bit healthier, and snack smarter. So I like to plan my snacks as well. And if I plan my snacks, I will stay on track. If I don't, I'm reaching for a candy bar. And let's see, I think we have one more slide. Okay. Canned versus frozen versus fresh produce. So when you're buying canned produce, it's usually going to have a lot of sodium in it. It's going to, some of the nutrients won't be there. And it's preserved at the peak of its freshness, but it is preserved. So it's not going to have that same fresh flavor. For frozen, make sure you're checking the sodium level and make sure you're checking to see if it has any added ingredients. Sometimes it's just the vegetable, but sometimes they have seasoning packets or butter or something else in it or sugar to make it taste better. So just make sure you're looking at those labels. And then fresh, try to eat in season when you can. I know it's not always possible, but when you can, it's the best flavor and the best nutrition and the best bang for your buck when you could eat in season. And let's see, I think next slide, please. All right, and here are some resources.
Thank you for that great presentation, Weezy. Now I will open up the floor for any questions the audience may have. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat.
I did see one we had before about non-lactose sources of calcium in dairy. So there is like the lactose-free milk, totally fine, good stuff. It really is no different. Just the lactose sugar is broken down, so your body doesn't have to do that and give you gas. Soy milk is great. There are a lot of plant-based milks. The thing is, a lot of them don't have the same amount of protein in them. And, you want to use almond milk in your cereal, great. But you think about dairy milk and soy milk have 8 grams of protein per cup, 1 cup serving. Almond milk typically only has 1. So you want to think about that in the entire context of your nutrition. A lot of those other foods are also fortified. Dairy milk is fortified as well with like vitamin D and things like that. But you want to make the choice that's best for you within the context of everything else that you're doing as well. But I just wanted to make a note of that. Ripple milk is good too. It's a pea protein based milk. Kids with allergies, typically, that's one they typically use.
Slides down. There was another question that had been typed earlier. How do we safely store cooked food like a casserole? Like, does it need to be cooled before we put it in the refrigerator? How do we do that?
I can answer that one. So food should be cooled within, from a food safety standard, should be cooled within 4 hours before you put it, cooled down to 40 degrees within 4 hours. So if you put it on your counter and leave it out at room temperature for a couple hours and then put it in your fridge so it doesn't warm your fridge up, that would be fine. Here in a restaurant, we would put the whole casserole pan in another pan of ice to cool it down quicker. Cooling it down is very technical, but cooling it from 125 to 70 degrees, that is where the most microorganisms grow within that temperature zone. So getting it through that temperature zone really fast is the best way to do it. But At home, when you're cooking in smaller portions, it's fine just to leave it on the counter for about an hour, and then wrap it up and put it in the fridge.
And then there was one more question previously has been asked about avocados and if you store them with or without the peel.
With the peel. And the pit too, when you can. The pit will help it stay fresher longer. And then defrosting meats. You could defrost in the microwave if you're going to use it right away. You could defrost it in a sink of running water, like cool water, room temperature water, not warm water, but in a sink of room temperature water. Just don't leave it in there until it's all the way defrosted. So keeping an eye on it, make sure you don't leave it in there for more than a couple hours. Or you could use, if you're using ground beef, you could, as part of the cooking process, you could defrost the meat. So if you're making like taco meat, you could put the frozen meat in the pan with a little bit of water and just keep breaking it down.
Then there's also a question about rice, on reheating rice.
Yes, you should refrigerate rice. And then when you reheat it, I found the best way to do it is to put it in a bowl in the microwave and put an ice cube on top, and then cover it and put it in the microwave, and it helps re-steam it and it brings it right back to normal.
Ooh, I like that tip.
Yeah, I was saying my rice ended up being dry when I heat it up again. So that's,
yeah.
I've been doing it wrong.
I see there's one in there for you, Weezy, about the leftovers. How long can leftovers stay in the fridge? It's 3 to 4 days, right?
Food safety standards for ServSafe is 7 days, but it depends on what it is. Honestly, I would do a sniff check, do a visual check, but maximum 7 days. 3 to 4 days is a safe range. Do you want to answer the one about organic fruits and vegetables?
Sure, yeah. So here's the thing with organic. You want to buy organic? Fine, great, love that. If it's a processed food and it has organic ingredients, that makes way less of a difference. Now, what's been found is actually Consumer Reports did an excellent breakdown of organic foods and non-organic foods, and they found most foods do fall within the limits of what the EPA and everything says is safe to eat in terms of pesticide levels and stuff. And the thing is, you wash your produce before you eat it. Eat locally, as Weezy said, because the thing is too, some of these smaller farms, they don't have the money to get an organic certification. It costs money to get that. They may be following best practices, but they can't say we're certified organic, so they can't use that term when in reality, they probably are. So another thing, eating locally, you're probably going to get good quality stuff, the most nutritious stuff, like she said, because it spent less time kind of rolling through the trucking and storage process. And that you're washing your produce. And honestly, I'd rather see you eat the produce. If it's like $6 for a container of organic blueberries and $2 on sale for a container of conventional blueberries, and that is kind of what but that goes over your budget for the week, get the conventional stuff. Get 3 things of the conventional stuff. Then you got all kinds of blueberries and make blueberry pies and everything else. But I'd rather see people, we need to eat more produce in this country. Me, myself included. I'd rather just see people eat the produce than worry about all those tiny little nuances. And then I see one about sardines. Sardines are not typically a mercury concern, unless I have, not that it's
No.
Albacore tuna, it's a bigger fish.
Yeah, the bigger fish that eat the smaller fish, that's where the mercury concern comes in.
Yep. And
how do you wash your fruits and veg? I don't know about the canned frozen tuna. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
And then how do you wash your fruits and vegetables? We just wash with water, but how do you wash your vegetables?
Yeah, that's what I do too. Just water. I know there's rinses and things like that, but water is perfectly fine to get off what you need to get off.
Great. I know we're getting very close to the end, and I see the questions have kind of stopped coming in. So I will close this out and just want to say thank you to all of those wonderful questions and a great discussion. We have sparked a lot of thoughtful and collaborative dialogue. The diverse perspectives and innovative ideas shared today underscore our collective commitment to fostering positive change. As we move forward, let's leverage the insights gained here to drive actionable solutions, forging partnerships that will empower communities, improve access to nutritious options, and enhance overall well-being. By continuing to work together with dedication and creativity, we have the opportunity to make a lasting impact on the nutritional landscape of Arizona, fostering healthier, more resilient communities for generations to come. Thank you all for your invaluable contributions, and here's to the shared journey ahead.
Thank you all for
Thank you,
joining us
everybody.
today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.